back to Weekend Ag Matters. Here is Mark Magnuson.
Hello and welcome into Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Mark Magnuson. In today's episode, Riley Smith speaks with Brad Hammes of Helena. Dustin Hoffmann is joined by United States Senator Joni Ernst, and Russ provides his faith-based segment. Let's turn our attention now to this week's news headlines. There are few certainties in farming. Weather, prices, and regulations are always shifting and forcing farmers to think on their feet. One way to deliver certainty for farmers and fuel retailers is through the implementation of year-round E15. National Corn Growers President Jed Bauer says that certainty for fuel retailers would be provided in the form of year-round E15 legislation.
E15 would provide certainty to the retailers, which in turn builds the infrastructure out to lower the cost for consumers.
Bauer says that the certainty of year-round E15 provided through legislation would be a massive boost to corn growers.
To the corn farmer in a time when we're so desperately in need of some relief, I can't emphasize how much it would mean just to my operation and to all my friends and colleagues across the country.
He says certainty is needed for corn growers who have battled several years of lower prices for their corn and rising input costs.
When you talk about all the bushels, Senator, and the amount of acres corn happened to cover this past year, I mean, a lot of farmers are looking for a way to make a profit, and they're hoping this is the light at the end of the tunnel.
In short, Bauer says that year-round E15 sales would provide hope and more profitability for corn growers and deliver certainty to fuel retailers and price relief for consumers. For more on this story and all of our daily news stories, you can visit our website at iowaagnet.com. Generally speaking, it was a mild and dry winter season for the United States, and it has left many areas of the country with dryness as the beginning of the planting season approaches. USDA meteorologist Brad Hammes details the lack of precipitation this winter season and provides more specifics from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Less than 5 inches of precipitation on average fell across the lower 48 states during that 3-month period. Turns out to be the 5th driest winter on record, with numbers going all the way back to the 1890s.
The last time the United States experienced a drier winter season was the winter of 1980-1981. Hammes says that the dry winter we've experienced this season has led to an expansion of drought coverage, including for many of the ag production areas of the United States.
Temperatures across the lower 48 states averaging a little over 37 degrees Fahrenheit. That is nearly 5 degrees above average.
Hammes says the mild temperatures resulted in the second warmest winter on record. He adds that many key growing areas of the country are in need of moisture as the planting season draws near. Front-month soybeans began Monday with a price of $12.14 before seeing losses of 70 cents to close at $11.55 and a quarter. In addition to continuing conflict in the Middle East and shipping issues in the Strait of Hormuz, comments from President Donald Trump brought negative price movement to the soybean complex. President Donald Trump was scheduled to visit with the president of China, Xi Jinping, at the end of March, but Trump indicated that the meeting could be delayed.
Right before the grain open, we had a couple of headlines that really hit the beans and the grains in general pretty hard. The first was that President Trump had said that he could delay the summit with China's President Xi. That came through a conversation with Financial Times.
That is commodity broker Greg McBride of Allendale, who says that additional comments about Chinese ag purchases of U.S. commodities also were negative for the soybean marketplace.
Through conversations with Secretary Bessent and his counterpart from China meeting in Paris, saying that China was open to buying more ag products. And those ag products that they were talking about specifically were pork, beef, and non-soybean row crops. So that designation of non-soybean row crops really got the soybean market running scared. We dropped about 20 cents on the open. It kind of set back, started to calm down a little bit, and then ratcheted up overnight.
These latest developments also bring into question rumored additional purchases of U.S. soybeans by China, says McBride. Stephen Wall is the Development Manager of Sustainability at Syngenta, and he tells Iowa Ag Radio about a tool that can help growers measure, benchmark, and improve their sustainability performance at the farm level.
The app's called CropWise Sustainability, so you can download it on your phone, whether it's from the Google or Apple Store, and it's really designed to help simplify sustainability for growers. So they get asked for data all the time from their customers, who they supply to, ultimately the value chain, and they ask for data, ask for reports, and it's designed to make it simple. It's a quick app that you can do for about 45 minutes, and you can use it in multiple different ways for different reporting needs. So that's kind of and it helps a grower understand kind of what's going on as far as sustainability for their operation.
That's all the time we have for headlines this week. Let's turn things over now to Russ Parker and his faith-based Food for Thought segment here on Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Before my father-in-law passed away, we purchased his 2006 Buick Lucerne. Even at 20 years old, it had less than 60,000 miles on it, and it's been a terrific car. But recently, some mechanical things have popped up. Most notably, the ABS light has come on, and the car just doesn't handle like it used to. So I put the car up on the lift and discovered something I didn't expect. The car has a leveling system, and 3 of the 4 sensors are broken. That caught me by surprise. And kind of related, when we had our house built 20 years ago, the foundation walls had to be perfectly level, with timber frame posts, all with pre-cut mortises. Those posts had to be perfectly aligned, corner to corner and side to side, so that everything would fit just right. Perfectly level wasn't optional, it was essential. And there are all kinds of tools to make that happen, aren't there? Bubble levels and plumb bobs and transits, and yes, even electronic sensors designed to keep things running smooth and true. The word level is one we use a lot in our everyday language. We'll say level with me, meaning tell me the truth. Or we'll talk about keeping a level head when things get difficult. And of course, we want a level playing field so that all things are fair. And sometimes we challenge ourselves to reach the next level. And all of these expressions carry the same idea: balance, alignment, things being where they're supposed to be. But if we're honest, life doesn't always feel level, does it? Sometimes life feels a little like that Buick with a broken leveling system. Things get out of balance and maybe even a little shaky. And just like that car, when something underneath isn't right, you can feel it in how the whole thing handles. And that goes for our life too. Scripture gives us a picture of what it means to live a level life. In Proverbs we read, "Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways." It's a reminder to pay attention to where we're headed, to make sure our lives are grounded in what is true and right. And when we keep our eyes fixed on Jesus and we take time to realign our hearts and priorities, something interesting happens. The rough spots begin to smooth out, not because life has suddenly become easy, but because we're standing on a foundation that is steady and true. So maybe today is a good day to ask a simple question. Am I level? Not in terms of perfection, but in terms of how I'm living my life. Because when we stay focused on Him, when we keep our balance rooted in faith, even on the uneven roads of life, we can be level set, grounded on the foundation of Jesus Christ. Food for thought, I hope. This is Russ Parker. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Russ. Up next, we will have Riley Smith's conversation with Brad Hammes of Helena. That's next here on Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Farmers, stay on top of your local market with Basis Matters from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Every day, we bring you the latest corn and soybean cash prices from inland grain elevators and river terminals across Iowa. Get the prices you need to make the best-selling decisions, no matter where you are in the state. Basis Matters connects you to the numbers that matter most to your farm. Tune in every weekday only on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network and make informed grain marketing decisions with Basis Matters.
Welcome back to Weekend Ag Matters. Here's Riley Smith.
Visiting with Brad Hammes of the Helena Products Group, and we're here outside of the Helena trailer. Great to see, brand new trailer, and we know that innovation never stops.
Yep.
And we see that theme here on the trailer. It's the theme within Helena. Tell us about that.
And that's what we try to model our Helena Products Group off of, is innovation never stops. Even back to our early days as predominantly an adjuvant formulator, there are several classes of adjuvants now that came to be because Helena created them. So that's been kind of a theme of ours throughout our history of the company, is continuing to innovate in agriculture. And this theme now with our brand new trailer unveiled here for the first time at the Commodity Classic this year. This series, it's a podcast series, it's an educational series. There's even classroom activities and information that ag teachers can use. So truly trying to innovate, not just for current agriculturists, but for the future of agriculture as well.
And very important to touch on that future of agriculture, because you can't increase that knowledge of the ag industry without starting at the high school level. We see kids are more and more removed from the farm each generation. It's not even that their grandparents, they might be their great-grandparents were on the farm and they're no longer there. Having that connection is really great.
It certainly is. And just the understanding of milk doesn't come from the grocery store, right? And it's hard to be in Iowa and not see agriculture everywhere you go. But even just the folks from the cities. I live in the Quad Cities, and even my wife grew up in town and didn't know anything about soybeans until she met me. We scouted some soybean fields just to help her understand what actually went on in farming.
And you kind of mentioned as well before we started going of innovation never stops in Helena, but it also never stops within the ag industry. And it's very interesting to see as the ag industry has evolved, so as Helena, you mentioned starting predominantly adjuvants, but now really expanded quite broad.
Expanded into not just adjuvants, biological products, nutritional products. And one of the ones we're really excited about is a new value-added herbicide. And that's a place certainly with innovation that we need to be focused, is this continually more and more challenging weed management, right? Keeping our fields clean, keeping water hemp at bay, managing mare's tail in the spring, giant ragweed, all the weeds that we see across Iowa. The challenges that we have of not only keeping things clean, but also trying to prevent future growing resistance issues. And that's a product that we have called Testament. There's a new one that we've launched this past fall. And that's a great residual with great flexibility, not only corn herbicide, but also a bean-free. And so it is pre-plant, pre-emergent, not for over the top, but there is a fantastic burn down molecule in it. So starting clean with the field, taking care of any early season mare's tail, any of the chickweed and henbit, some of those winter annuals that can be a problem for us and lingering into the field, but then having two different residual molecules in there and two different chemical families within the group 15s. So having not only pyroxasulfone, but having a dimethenamide molecule in there. And one of the really interesting things about those two, or that combination in particular, is you have one molecule that has a little bit quicker activation, doesn't need as much rain to get it going, doesn't have quite as long as residual, but then you have the second mode of action. The pyroxasulfone has a little bit more water for activation, but has a long residual. So you get a great overlapping residual. You get a more consistent early season activation because it doesn't take as much rain. But then you get that great clean start because of the staflufenicil going in there to burn everything down and get that field ready to go to put our corn and beans in.
And we know with Testament, like you mentioned, for corn and beans, having that comprehensive control, a lot of flexibility there. It's kind of a solution where it's like, I see what I have here, and it can be used in many different ways on many different operations, right?
Definitely, and trying to make things easy, right? You have one product that you can use, certainly have to change rates between corn and soybeans, but it's that great setup, right? And I think personally, most of our crops need to have a two-pass system. I know there are some growers that can manage their weeds with one pass, especially in corn, but this is a great way to set that up and make your second pass timing more consistent, whether it's just with Testament by adding our adjuvant grounded to that to help maintain that residual length in our herbicides. But a lot of key, like you said, flexibility going between the crops and predictability. And I think that's one of the biggest things with weed management is we want things to be predictable and consistent. And things like Testament, especially Testament mixed with grounded, would be a great way to have that plan for your early season herbicide management.
And of course, getting ahead of the weeds as well. Like you mentioned, we want that prevention. Once the weeds are in the field, they're really hard to, or once they're established in the field, really hard to get rid of. So being ahead of that and then staying on top of it, you mentioned with the residual as well. Stay on top and don't just get ahead, stay ahead.
Stay ahead, yep. And that's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Just thinking about how these plants grow, it's a lot harder for a crop to have to metabolize a really aggressive in-season herbicide application. And so the more we can do with residuals and prevent those weeds, that's the easiest weed to control is one that never comes out of the ground. Right? When you can control, like what we have to deal with, a lot of water hemp that's maybe this big compared to one that's this big, or late in the season, you see the ones that are starting to poke out above the soybean canopy. Those are the ones we're not going to get a whole lot of activity on. We might be able to take the tops off of them, feel better about that, but they're still doing a lot of damage, making more weed seed to put back in our seed bank. So it's that residual starting out with the with the Testament, following that up with an in-season residual. A lot of times you could even use a different Group 15, so that in-season using metolachlor, acetochlor molecule to continually mix and match those different modes of action, those different specific chemicals, so that we can help maintain and protect the longevity of the herbicides that we do still have that work.
All right, Brad, lots of great information today. For anyone who wants to stay up to date with Helena, how can they do that?
HelenaAgra.com would be a great resource. Check out our Innovation Never Stops site on that to see the different things and the different ways that Helena is trying to innovate in agriculture and try to help our producers continue to be profitable into the future.
And that again was Brad Hammes of Helena Agriculture, and always great to have him on the show. Coming up next on Weekend Ag Matters, Dustin will wrap everything up as he visits with Iowa Senator Joni Ernst. You're listening to Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. Stay informed with the closing market report from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, your essential summary of the day's market activities and their impact on the agricultural economy. Join us for timely updates and expert commentary on commodity prices and market trends with trusted ag market analysts from around the Midwest. Tune in every Monday through Friday on your local Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate for your daily market recap and insights to stay ahead in the ag economy.
Welcome back to Weekend Ag Matters. Here's your host, Dustin Hoffmann.
Back on Weekend Ag Matters, of course, National Ag Week is wrapping up today, and National Ag Day is next Tuesday. But also here on Saturday, we are going to be celebrating the women in agriculture. That's part of our discussion we've got coming up right now with Senator Joni Ernst. So we've got a lot of things that we're going to be talking about today, especially when it comes to biofuels and things like that. But we're going to start with something important really here. Of course, National Ag Week going on, National Ag Day next week, but National Women in Ag Day coming up on Saturday. Would you like to touch on that and how we mark that occasion?
Yes, I have a bipartisan effort, a resolution saying that we need to honor women in agriculture. This will happen on March 21st. And we are so excited because there are over 1 million women engaged in agriculture across the United States, and 50,000 of them are right in our home state of Iowa. So we're really excited about that opportunity. So we'll join in this celebration with all of the other ag celebrations that we have across the month of March.
And of course, there is no limit to what women are doing in agriculture, whether that they are working with elevators, they're agronomists, they're farmers themselves. I mean, they are touching every facet of this business.
Yes, absolutely. We've got women veterinarians. We have got women that are in ag lending. You name it, they are engaged. They're working in our FSA offices. They are out doing conservation. It touches every part of the agricultural spectrum. And we're just really glad so many women are engaged in this area. You know, folks like my mother, who always helped out on our family farm, to my sister, who's actually doing farming right now. So I love that we're able to take a day, set it aside, and just focus on those women who are breaking barriers and continue serving in this incredibly important area.
All right. Well, then moving on, we're going to be talking about 45Z. Of course, that's something we are waiting to get everything finalized on. You want to talk about where things are right now?
Yeah, so right now going through the rulemaking process, and I've penned a letter to the administration because right now it's incredibly important that we get 45Z right. Senator Chuck Grassley and I have both been really big supporters of 45Z, but we need to make sure that it's all encompassing and it really benefits our Iowa farmers. And so we're encouraging whether it's USDA, whether it's the Energy Department, whether it is Treasury, they need to be aware of the other efforts that our farmers are engaged in. So those farmers that are using no-till technologies, those that are doing cover crops, if we're using optimized fertilizer. I mean, there are so many different things that simply were not included in proposed drafts of the rule. So we're really focused on those efforts. And again, penned a letter to the administration, really working with the leaders at those three agencies in particular. but making sure that even though we've been doing no-till farming in Iowa for years and years, decades even, I was a small child when my dad started no-till farming, to those farmers that are using cover crops and started using those years ago. We want to make sure that even though these are existing technologies, that they're taken into consideration because they are conserving our soil and making it healthier. We are sequestering carbon using those types of technologies. So let's make sure we get the benefit from it.
And of course, getting the 45Z correct not only benefits our farmers, but our biofuels producers in this state that are going to be buying those crops from those farmers, so they know what they're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. We can get up to $1 of credit then for using those domestic crops and these types of technologies that fall within 45Z. So that's why we've just really got to get this right as they are writing guidance and rules for 45Z.
Another topic we're going to talk about here is E15. We've talked about this often and trying to get this year-round bill passed. It didn't happen like we were hoping in February. We're still sitting. I mean, if anything, right now we're seeing the power of what E15 has at the price at the pump as those prices continue to go up.
Oh, absolutely, and it has been pretty remarkable how I'm cornered anytime I'm walking in the hallways. I'm cornered about, oh, what do you think about the price of fuel today? And I just pivot because I know they would rather talk about Iran and what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. But what I can do, and my mission always, is to promote our Iowa biofuels. And included in that, of course, is E15 year round. So I immediately pivot. I don't go where they want me to go. What I do is talk about E15 year round and how important it is. It's a win-win. It is a win for the farmers and producers of the ethanol, and then it is a win for the consumers as they go to the retail pump because they immediately see the cost of their fuel lowered when they're purchasing E15. So I think this is a great solution when we are going through a difficult time with our energy and fuel prices. E15 is such a fantastic solution.
All right. And then finally today, we're going to be hearing about Glenn Smith. I know he's going through the confirmation process to be another USDA undersecretary. You want to talk about that situation?
Absolutely. I am a huge fan of Glenn Smith. Of course, I've known Glenn and his family for years and years and years. They do farming up in Cass County, just to the north of where I live in Montgomery County. A really great man. He has served in various administrations through the years. He's a farmer, but also has served in various capacities here in Washington, D.C. He is going to be a great, great member of this administration. So he is making his way through the confirmation process, and that should be happening very, very soon. We should get a vote on the floor of the Senate, and all will be well in Washington, D.C., because we have another Iowan serving at the federal level.
Well, that definitely would sound good. And speaking of the USDA, I mean, you're talking a little bit about, have been talking about in the past too, about restructuring some things there. We've talked back in the past about office buildings not being used to their capacity. You want to talk about the update that's going on there?
Yes, this is something I have been hounding on USDA for a very long time. And it's not just USDA, it's across the federal government, the unused office space that we have. But right here in Washington, D.C., we have a glaring example of what it is to waste money on an office building that right now with the USDA South Ag building is only 1/3 occupied. And if you are familiar with the South Ag building, this is a behemoth of a building. It is nearly one city block big, and it's only 1/3 occupied. This building has about $1.7 billion of deferred maintenance on it, and it costs us hundreds of millions of dollars every year in upkeep. Even though it's largely vacant. So working with Secretary Rollins at USDA, we have decided that the building should be sold to save taxpayer dollars and to bring a little income into the federal government. And so it will eventually make its way onto the auction block. It does have to go through some checks with the GSA, but we're really excited about this opportunity. And I think it's important because what we're seeing now is a move to restructure USDA and put more of those jobs out across the United States into the regions where they will be better representing the constituencies that they serve. So I'm excited. I think Brooke Rollins is doing absolutely the right thing by getting rid of this largely vacant and extremely costly building.
All right. Well, Senator, we thank you so much for the time and giving us an update. And of course, we have the Women in Ag Day being marked on Saturday and National Ag Day next week, Tuesday. Anything you want to send to our farmers here in your closing comments?
Well, God bless our farmers for feeding and fueling not just the great United States of America, but the world as well. You are loved and appreciated by all of us.
All right. Senator Ernst has been my guest here today. Senator, we thank you so much for taking the time to visit with us.
Always, Dustin. Thank you so much for the time.
That again was Iowa Senator Joni Ernst here on Weekend Ag Matters. That's going to do it for today's show. You can find all our content online at iowaagnet.com. For Russ Parker, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson, we thank you for tuning in. This has been Weekend Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.